What is going on? Yeah, we're live. Hey,
Yes,
trying to
we
make
are.
trying to make sure it's on in all the right places. We are
Looking
on
for
YouTube.
love in all the wrong places.
What are you talking about?
You don't know buckwheat?
I mean, I've
Looking
heard
for
that.
love? Looking for love.
All
Okay.
right, all right.
It's a great song.
Look,
It's Buckwheat's cover of Looking for Love. It's called Looking for Love.
oh, okay.
If you know, you know.
I don't know. Obviously,
Really? You've never heard of that.
no. Am I
Eddie
supposed to?
Murphy, SNL. He does
Oh,
Buckwheat Sings. And as Buckwheat, he sings all these songs, but of course, all the titles are messed up because Buckwheat can't
right.
talk right.
Yeah. So I think there's definitely some older SNL that was before my time where I know it's
Yeah,
funny, but it's
I
like
know.
it's
You were probably still in diapers.
I I
Maybe not
no.
born. Maybe not even born yet.
I was born in '82.
Holy shit,
What?
dude. You're such
Dude,
a
look.
kid.
Yeah,
Dude,
tell it. No, I'm old. No, what do you mean? You're
you were
just
born
that.
in
You're
80s? You were born in the
82.
80s.
Yes, I was born in the 80s.
Dude, 82. So I was a sophomore in high school.
Okay.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
I guess I
And
am.
I was out of diapers before you graduated. So there we go. We were both out of diapers.
Yes,
We could say we were both out of diapers by the time you graduated high school.
yeah. I was too. I was out of diapers when I graduated high
I would
school.
I would think so. That's good.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
happy for you. I'm very happy for you. Hey John, John Suarez, hello.
Thanks for watching.
What's good? Thanks for
Hello,
watching. Yes.
terrestrial traveler from Idaho.
There we go.
Welcome.
Yeah. Welcome. Yeah, hopefully we have a good one today because we have well, let's get into some nuts and bolts first. Say hi to everyone.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell people what's going on. Make sure
Oh,
if we have a hotline. Um,
yes, we
I
do.
have
So we have a hotline.
530.
Yeah,
Yeah,
530. Go ahead.
332. Now you're trying to throw me off. 332-8020. Call
Yes,
it. We'll get to it on Friday's bonus show.
that's right. Also, we should announce today is June the 1st, and for the entire month of June, you can go to thecollective.com and you can subscribe and get the first month free for the
Yes,
month of
you
June
can.
at the collective QUOLLECTIVE.
Yeah, it's on the screen right now if you're watching at home.
Do it. Please do it.
Yeah. Get
Support
up.
independent journalism. Fight the
Yeah,
fascists.
I just posted about this. Like the New York Times just had the guts to finally say like, "Hey, maybe Elon Musk is on too many drugs."
But notice they waited till he had
They
stepped
waited
off.
until he's on his way out, and now it's
Yeah,
okay to say it. And that's
yeah,
just that was the epitome of someone that like I'm supposed to agree with the New York Times, right? Because it's on the left, like me, and
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like no. Then we're missing the point again. It's a lot of times it's like corporate interests versus the people.
yeah,
Oligarchs versus the working class. Like they've pitted it the other way. But anyway, the
yeah,
point being is that when we need independent media more than ever. So yeah, you get the first month free, and then it's $5 after that a month. But what it ensures is that there's no ads, there's no corporate sponsors. We do a huge revenue share with all of our contributors, and I've done the math. Like doing it the way we do it, you could have like a 50th of the traffic I've gotten at other places and make the same amount of money.
yeah,
Meaning like a lot of less people could come to our site and you'll get paid at a way higher percentage than so we're trying to do it kind of like giving as much away to the content creators and the journalists who are doing the independent stuff. Like they're
yeah,
out there grinding and bringing good news to people. And so,
yeah,
yeah, we hope people will sign up for that to ensure independent media really can carve out a space and continue to carve out a space where, corporate media falls way behind.
yeah. And I am currently posting blogs and articles in both the collective and on my Pathos blog. Well, and also third place on my Patreon. But the truth is, and this is not a knock on Pathos or anything, but the truth is, you and I both, as Pathos bloggers, we know there are things we cannot post on Pathos, right? There are things
Sure.
I have posted. I have had ideas for posts that I've thought to myself, I probably shouldn't put that on Patheos.
I'll give them a little bit of a shout out though, because I've said some shit and they
Yeah, they that's true. They did push back to you though that when you
oh
do a
sure.
you have to say it's satire because people were believing you that your posts were real.
Well, Google believed me enough to trend like on the top of their
Uh,
news page, which I suppose that could become problematic. But for me as the
was that
writer, it's
the Matt
hilarious.
Lauer one?
Yeah, Hillsong hiring Matt Lauer to be in charge of PR.
And they ran it as part of a
Ran it.
release.
Run it, man.
It's hilarious.
Like got him. Which I did add, to be fair to me also, I did it was always tagged satire.
Right. Okay.
All of my satire was tagged in the SEO tags. I like on the bottom when you hit the tag, it was always tagged satire.
Okay.
So anyway, yeah, and that's where I'm going to be writing is at the Collective now. That's where all my writing is going to be.
Yeah.
On,
So
on a regular basis.
Exclusively on the Collective. Yeah. Right now, I'm straddling a little bit.
Essentially, I mean, I'm not saying I would never publish on Patheos. I can't spread myself too thin. And we've wanted to do something like this for years before we even took over Quire. There was a fake site built, not a fake site. It was just never public. Like there was a site built years and years ago, not by us, not by Ralph.
Yeah, called the Collective. Yeah.
Well, no, it's called the Chorus.
It was called the Chorus. That's right.
Yeah, but we changed the name for a variety of reasons. And now now we're doing it. So yeah, we have a lot of great contributors already. December Roses contributing, Angela Parker, Stuart Deloney, Paul Swearingen, Lisa Martinez. Let's see if I can get them all.
Karen Tibbles,
yeah,
Anna Clark
Miller. Yeah. I might be forgetting people. We're talking to a bunch of people.
My friend Lisa Martinez, she just joined up. And we are talking to other people as well. So I can't say anything right now, but if those people join us, let's just say, I will tease this. There's one particular person that I've invited that if they were to say yes, would be huge because they previously were part of a YouTube channel with over 3 million followers. That'd be pretty sweet.
There we go. So join up, get the first month free. And then if you don't like it, you just cancel everything and you won't get charged.
For $5 a month, man, the quality and the quantity of content both is really strong.
Yeah. Shout out to Naomi for designing a site that is beyond what I envisioned.
Yeah, it's really great. Yeah. So yeah, check it out, everybody.
Crystal says, who? Matthew posting shit? Never. Yeah. As she edits my book. Right. Yeah, so that's what we got going on. But we're not here to talk about that all day.
We have something to talk about. Yeah, so
we do got something to talk about. We got something to talk about.
So yes. Can I set it up?
Please do while I pull it up so I could bring it up so people can actually see for a second here.
You're right. Okay. So just to catch you up, a couple of weeks ago, we did our first Patheos podcast with a bunch of Patheos bloggers. And one of them was this gentleman, Dennis Knapp, who blogs on Patheos for the Catholic channel. And on that recording, on that panel discussion, Dennis let us know that they were reading Rome is Right, the book that Matthew and I wrote, and that they would publish a review. And we're like, awesome, that sounds great. So I think the very next week, the post is up there. It is right there. If you're watching us live, you see it on the screen. How not to read Romans right. Lessons in eisegesis. So he posted it, and it was not favorable. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's the setup. Yeah, I got it brought up here. I'm not going to maybe I can keep it up. Can we keep it up? Should I keep it up?
Sure. No, we keep it up for now. That's good.
Keep it up for now. All
right. We're going to be responding to this review, and I want to put review in quotes because it really... I'm disappointed. I just want to say, because I know you've got a lot to say, Matt. I got a lot to say. So let me just say out of the gate for myself, Dennis, I'm disappointed in the review because and I even said this on that episode. I said, when Dennis mentioned, they were going to review it, I said, great, because we want people to review it and respond directly to the specific things we're arguing in the book. And so that's what I expected Dennis was going to do. And Dennis instead just kind of threw a bunch of accusations out there without giving any examples, and really didn't argue at the same level that we were arguing, like to say, okay, Keith and Matt are saying this, and they're quoting these sources, and this is their evidence. and I'm going to refute that evidence by saying, here's why that evidence is false, or why there's evidence they didn't consider. Like none of that took place. This was not the kind of review I expected from Dennis.
I just did notice that there are 59 comments, and I have not gone there.
Oh, that would be fun.
That might be a part 2, because I was like,
I'm
oh
sure
damn, 59
a lot of it-
comments. This is a popular article then, because unless it's
Yeah.
just two people talking on a long thread, that
Two
could
people
be that.
arguing back and forth. They sometimes that's
Right.
what happens.
It
Two
could
people get
be.
into it. Yeah.
But I've known personally, if I come to my page and there's 59 comments, I'm like, oh shit, who shared this article and
Yeah.
where?
Yeah.
So anyway, I just noticed that. Okay, so first off, how not to read Romans right, Lessons in Eisegesis by Dennis Knapp. I will say, opening, I have no ill feelings toward Dennis. I thought he was great on the show. He's more than welcome to come back. And he did, in another article, give us a shout out and say it was a lovely conversation.
Yeah. Of course.
So tip of the hat. That is I think the point of the Patheos political panel series that we're doing, and we're going to continue to do, is that we do get some good stuff out of this, and we have conversations with people we wouldn't otherwise maybe converse with as often. The placement of this is really funny. I thought this was an ad at first, and then I realized it's his featured image, eisegesis, with our cover there.
Yes.
I thought that was a nice touch.
In big bold letters. So that's his main response to our book.
Yeah.
Basically, his one-word review is that reading Romans is eisegesis.
Yeah.
I would argue it is absolutely not eisegesis, and I would also argue that he has not sufficiently argued that it is.
No, yeah. So I think, the disappointment is not in the fact that he disagreed. We knew he was going to disagree.
I knew.
I think the disappointment is that this is a very thin review, and we'll get into it. But he does say, first paragraph, recently I appeared on Heretic Happy Hour. Goes on. It's kind of just the opening little thing here. His reflections you can click on, which he had a very nice time. We agree. In preparation for the podcast, I purchased and began reading Romans Right. Reading Romans Right. That's hard to say. Co-authored by Giles and DiStefano. After I mentioned this, Keith asked me to write a review below, and he does that. All right. So then he gets into the nuts and bolts of it. Exegesis versus eisegesis. The book aims to discern the true meaning of Paul's message in the book of Romans. Biblical scholars refer to this task as exegesis, quote, seeking to understand what a text means or communicates on its own. By contrast, eisegesis involves imposing a preconceived or foreign meaning onto a text, even if that meaning could not have been the original intent.
Wow.
Okay, that's okay. So that's I mean, that's good. That's what eisegesis is, right? It's like,
yes,
you're importing a meaning onto the text. Great, we got definitions out of the way. I agree with those. Yes. To achieve their goal of exegeting Romans and correctly faulty eisegesis, the authors must understand the text on its own terms. Unfortunately, in this regard, they ultimately fail. Reading Romans Right stands as a clear example of the very eisegesis it claims to correct. So that's the big accusation, right?
That's the big dropping the sword, slapping.
And everyone can see my targeted ad from Patheos here. Obviously, this makes sense because I do farming.
That's 70% off.
Yeah, I do farming, so obviously they think like I would park my giant tractor that I don't have in that thing. So we get a little peek into how Matt is targeted on his ads. A word on some agreement. One of the primary corrections, Knapp says, the author's attempt involves justification theory or penal substitution atonement, commonly espoused by historically reformed and evangelical Protestants of JT. They write, by faith, one accepts the quid pro quo and believes that the 2,000-year-old lynching of God's son washes their sin away. Then they are imputed with righteousness, i.e. saved. Yeah, that's what we wrote that.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
As a Catholic, I also reject JT and PSA, a point the authors acknowledge. Catholicism holds that the Son offers satisfaction for our sin, not in place of our punishment, but out of perfect love for the Father. However, the author's correction promotes an elaborate eisegesis in support of universal salvation. While I hope no one ends up in hell, this remains a hope, not a certainty. Yeah, as a universalist, I know that. No, I hope people do end up in hell. I think there needs to be purgation, and I think as a Catholic they might agree with me. Maybe they would have have a fully developed doctrine where I might not. But to think anyone waltzes into heaven, so to speak,
Yes, without having passed through any sort of
without pass through
correction
the
or
fire, as Paul would
yeah.
say, right?
And Jesus
Uh,
also says everyone will pass through the fire.
I know that people are going to go to hell.
Yes,
I don't
not
I
for
don't
eternity.
believe it makes any relational, metaphysical, ontological sense that people souls consciousness would forever be tortured in hell and stay like that doesn't make that sounds like a bad fiction, right? Like this is
Yeah,
not even to the level of like good fiction. It's just a bad story.
right.
So I feel like I've already been personally my type of universalism never says that I hope no one ends up in hell. I hope they do. I
Yeah,
because the fire analogies that the Bible gives us for God is purifying.
right.
And it's my hope that that purification process would have a point and that God would have the power to accomplish God's will, which would be to save everyone. So I think I've already been misinterpreted or misunderstood or misrepresented in what my universalism even is.
Right. Yeah, I mean, as a Catholic, again, and notice he qualified that comment as a Catholic because as a Catholic, he cannot disagree with anything the Catholic Church has said. So keep that in mind as well. Like he has a vested interest in making sure that whatever he says he agrees with must first be something that the Catholic Church agrees with.
Yeah. All right. My next ad is a travel trailer. There you go. Universal salvation. Does Paul contradict himself? All right. We'll see. How did the authors transform Paul into a universalist? They rely heavily on The Deliverance of God by Douglas Campbell.
I love that we're the ones who have transformed him into a universalist. It's not like his own statements don't out him as a universalist.
Yeah, I've always kind of chuckled at like, yeah, I think Paul's a universalist. Whether that means we should be is not the question. And I don't even ever say like Jesus is a universalist, though some people say. I'm like, I don't know if I can know Jesus' theology as well as I can know Paul's. So, okay, so so David Bentley Hart's a universalist, more or modern translation of the New Testament. I actually became a universalist and believed Paul was universalist before I had even heard of David Bentley Hart.
Right, exactly.
But anyway,
Right.
Campbell
Exactly.
contends that Paul uses a rhetorical device in Romans, a mock debate between false teachers, whom the authors identify as the gospel of wrath preachers, and the true universalist Paul. Okay, yeah,
Yep.
we do that. This is where I get really confused. Ironically, the authors engage in the very rhetorical tactic they attribute to Paul. I don't.
What?
I think that's not ironic. I think that's
Does he not understand what it is?
I think irony would be to say the authors engage in the very rhetorical tactic they attribute to the false teacher. That would be the irony.
There you go.
But right, like it's
Yes.
like the irony for me is when I say if this is the way we read Paul, it's ironic that Calvinists seem to always go to the places that the false
The
teacher
false
is
teacher,
talking.
that's why they love it, because they agree with what the false teacher is saying in the dialogue in the prosopopoeia. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the irony. Not that we would. Yeah, I don't know how it's ironic like that. Maybe they're saying that we're developing the script based on what we believe.
Well, look, then the next sentence, he says, every doctrine they oppose is assigned to the false teachers. Again, like
Uh-huh.
as if what we're doing is saying, oh, we don't like that part, so we're going to say that's the false teacher,
Right. While those they support are attributed to the true apostle Paul,
even when
even
this
when this
contradicts clear
contradicts clear
Pauline
Pauline
passage.
passages. Yeah, this is where it's like, okay, first off, and then it's just like it's like not like Paul is really complicated. Like first off, that's not what we're doing because he admits, like if we scroll up, I believe in this one, or in it, maybe it's in the other. He says, "I'm now agnostic." Well, I'm not agnostic in the way you might be defining, but I am agnostic in the fact that like, um, this Paul does not have any authority over me. I don't
Right.
care one way or the other. It's not like I'm trying to fit Paul into my universalist theology. You already acknowledged that I'm an agnostic. I I don't personally need. You're thinking of an apologist,
Right.
not someone who's just. I'm approaching this as an historian. I don't need Paul to say shit. Like it's not that I'm piecemealing Paul into to match what I personally believe in the 21st century. I don't care as much as what Paul believes as what Plato believes, what Aristotle believed, what any of them, Heraclitus.
Hmm.
Like that's not how I live my life. You're thinking of Christianity.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
thinking of Catholicism. You're thinking of evangelicalism. You're thinking of Calvinism.
Yeah, you know what's interesting too is that right there he says that what we are saying contradicts Philippians 2:12.
I didn't
But
understand that. I don't. What does that
what's
mean?
interesting is if you go and look at Philippians chapter 2 and look at verses 1 through 11, which are leading up to 12, what he misses is that in Philippians chapter 2 and verse 10, well, 9 and 10, is a universalist passage. This is where Paul says that at the name of Jesus, and this is actually in verse 10, at the name of Jesus, every knee would bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue, verse 11, acknowledge that Jesus Christ is Lord to the glory of God the Father. And I've written articles on this, again, yes, using the Greek New Testament translation that David Bentley Hart has done to show that exomologio is what's used in the Greek there. And it says that every knee would gladly bow and every tongue would gladly confess.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a universalist passage because if everyone gladly confesses that Jesus Christ is Lord, then everyone is saved. And then in verse 12, if Paul then in the context of having just said that says, therefore, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling, it's not a threat. It's just a reminder that, hey,
Right.
every one of us has to deal with, again, we're not saying that, again, like everyone passes through the fire. So we're all going to pass through the fire. It's really more about like, hey, make sure you're prepared so that you're ready for that. And that process is not as painful as it needs to be. But it's not saying that some of you aren't going to be saved. That's not
Yeah,
that's not the
I think
connotation there.
I think the real irony here is that to say, oh, this is wrong and ironic because what they're saying contradicts what Paul says, insert Bible verse here.
Yeah.
Like that to me is like it's lazy, right? Like you're wrong because it can't be right because Paul also says this and then it's one verse. You're right. You don't even go up here with
No.
every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and every tongue gladly give
Gladly
praise that
confess.
Jesus Christ is Lord to the glory of God the Father. And that's not just David Bentley Hart says.
No.
That's what the words mean. Like
that's what it means in the Greek. Yes.
That's what it means in Greek. Like there's a lot of times where there's English, like English, it takes a sentence to explain what one word in another language means. This is especially true like if you're like translating Chinese to English.
Right.
Like that's going to be really hard. Or Aramaic, right? Like a poetic language that's structured differently. And in the Greek sense, like you can't just say confess. Like confess could be like a gun on your, like in The Last of Us, Joel stabs someone in the knee and then has that person point to the map and then goes to the other person and says, you better point to the same part of the map and tell me where they are.
Right.
And that person may confess where the fuck they are.
Right.
But that's Joel Miller of The Last of Us, not God, the one who is infinitely merciful.
Yeah, that's the difference between a willful, glad, exuberant confession.
Both you could use the word confess there, but if you use the word exomologio, you're saying they gladly give praise and confess. Like yes, this is happily tell you where they are.
Yeah, because it says every knee will bow and every tongue gladly confess. That's universalist.
That's pretty universalist, and it's not because I want it to be.
Yeah, and so again, when he says, even when this contradicts clear Pauline passages like these two, but so Dennis is ignoring clear Pauline passages like 20 other universalist passages, which he does not mention and will not address, and that's what we wanted him to address.
Yeah.
Because we
And
give
then
specific verses in our book that he doesn't bring up and that are universalist passages, and he doesn't. I mean, even in the book of Romans, that he doesn't say, well, okay, then if it doesn't mean this, Dennis, then what does it mean? If it doesn't mean
yeah, and he
universal,
uses
what does
he
it mean?
uses First Corinthians too, and in First Corinthians there's this prosopopoia back and forth too, as Lucy Pepiot
Yes.
points out. And I'm not as concerned about that. They say, like, what contradicts First Corinthians 6:9-10? Like, you can't sit here and say
Yeah.
that the word they translate to homosexuality means what it means today. That's just
It
kind of, I
doesn't.
mean, at the best you could say we don't know what it really means. But
Yeah.
even if I go to like Bible Gateway, there's a footnote there, and it says the
Yes.
two Greek terms translated by this phrase refer to the passive and active partners in consensual homosexual acts. Does it mean consent? It means consensual, that word?
Yeah.
I mean, even if, like, again, to say that the modern understanding of a gay partnership is the same context as what's going on in the Corinthian church is just, to me, it's lazy. And to say, oh, it's clearly there because of insert clobber passage. Like, are we that underdeveloped in our scholarship where it's like you're just going to quote a clobber passage?
Yeah.
I mean, that's where I was disappointed. Like, you should have a better, you can make arguments without just resorting to like proof texting. Like, that just seems well beneath
Yeah.
like actual scholarship.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you. So I just looked it up you're right, on Bible Gateway, 1 Corinthians 6:9. It does have a note that says the words men who have sex with men, which, by the way, in other translations, it just says homosexuals. But the words men who have sex with men translate to two Greek words that refer to the passive and active participants in homosexual acts. That is not, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry, arsena kotai, that is not like, as if everyone just knows what arsena kotai means. No, there's a lot of scholarship and debate about what that word means. And you have to do more work than just read the footnote on Bible Gateway and say, oh, there you go. Or read the footnote in your English translation.
It's stupid because I mean, like, I don't think my gay friends generally think of themselves as homosexual anyway. Like, why? So you're still cool in the Bible with using a term that is psychological in origin, that was a diagnosis in a discipline, psychology, that's not, it's like barely 100 years old. Like, that's an outdated term that gay people don't even like use for themselves. Like, so, okay, so Paul says that those who practice homosexuality, if I were in a gay relationship, I would say I don't practice homosexuality.
Right. Well, not only that, I mean, again, this is nothing new. There's been so much scholarship. There's a whole documentary about this that, prior to 1946, that word in all the commentaries was translated as someone who was basically a pedophile. So it's pedophilia. It's not. It was not seen as consensual same-sex relationships. That's not what it used to mean, and that's not what it should mean today. That's not the proper way to translate that phrase.
Yeah. Again, like, I'll concede if Paul is saying that, again, we get a problematic Paul that is so contradictory that you can't even believe what he says.
Right. No. Yeah. Exactly.
Because yes, he's saying like all these, like, it just does, it's like it's just out of the blue. Like, it's like adulterers, thieves, greedy, drunkards, all these bad things, and then like your gay friends who are in a loving relationship and like help out their community.
Yeah, like what? Huh?
Just because they have sex at night, like,
yeah,
that just it's so like, yeah.
It's one of these things doesn't belong here.
yeah. What is not like the others? Okay, let's go on though. The authors pit Paul against Peter and James, because we're going to come back to that kind of stuff. But another major issue, this I didn't understand either. Another major issue is the author's portrayal of Paul as opposing Peter and James. He quotes us: "The tension in question is between the gospel of grace taught by Paul and the false gospel of Torah adherence taught by Peter, James, etc." And he quotes more: "We know that Paul's gospel was in danger of being written out of Christianity from its earliest days. Peter, James, and the Jerusalem church insisted that Gentile converts adopt Jewish markers and rites." Okay.
Because they did.
Yeah, he said.
See, again, as a Catholic, he can't admit that, because as a Catholic, he has to say no.
Well, hold on, though.
Peter was the first bishop. and the first pope. And see, therefore, they were all in agreement because they were all apostles. There was no argument. There was no disagreement.
Okay, fine. He goes on, and then I'll comment. This eisegesis, again, this isn't even the right use of the word, directly contradicts Acts 15, the whole chapter, where Peter and James help remove such requirements at the Council of Jerusalem, and Acts 10, 9 through 22, where Peter receives a vision abolishing the kosher laws. The author's continued endorsement of this falsehood shows a disregard for proper exegesis. Okay, well, let me have J. Louis Martin help me out. He wrote in the Anchor Yale Bible collection. He wrote the book on Galatians, which is another doorstop similar to Campbell's. Page 14. This is just opening comment, kind of setting the stage. Peter, James, and John, he says that the period prior to Paul's coming to Galatia, a meeting was convened involving the Jerusalem congregation and the one in Antioch, the later being represented by Barnabas and Paul, 2, 1 through 10. At that meeting, Paul had cordial and mutually respectful relations with Peter, James, and John, the dominant leaders of the church in Jerusalem. Later, his confidence was severely shaken as, from his point of view, a shadow fell over the scene at the Jerusalem church. In Galatians 2:12, it says, when Cephas, right, that's Peter. Am I losing my mind? Or Cephas? Right,
yes.
That's Peter.
Yes, that's Peter, yes.
When Peter came to Antioch, I opposed him to his face because he stood condemned. That does not sound to me like we're eisegeting.
All working together here.
Yeah. All working together. Oh, Matt and Keith say they had problems. No, Paul, out of his own mouth, in a letter he wrote to the Galatian church where he's very upset. So upset that he tells people to cut their own manhood off because they're forcing male converts to get circumcised. And Paul's saying, like, that, is that not what we're saying? By your own logic, Peter, you're condemned. Like, this gospel, like, could it be that Peter talked out of both sides of his neck and was wrestling with what it meant when he was introduced to Paul's understanding of the gospel versus what Peter himself understood Jesus to be? Do we not have a whole history of disciples and apostles not understanding Jesus?
Right, and especially Peter, by the way. Yeah.
So I don't, like, where is the like, that seems to be the story. We're not saying Peter is evil and Paul is perfect. We're saying that historically it seemed like there were times where Peter would say one thing, and then times where James would say one thing. Then there were times where they would say another thing, and they were very contradictory. And Paul was pointing out the contradictory gospel that they were espousing. And to say, if that truly is your gospel, then you go to Romans 2:1. Therefore, you stand condemned by your own logic.
Okay.
Here's why.
So scroll back up a little bit because I want to read again what you were just reading there, because this made me laugh out loud. The eisegesis directly contradicts Acts 15, where Peter and James helped remove such requirements as the Council of Jerusalem. Oh, really? Because weren't they the ones who initiated it in the first place? It's sort of like, well, it's like saying, well, yes, Your Honor, I did stab him 20 times, but I removed the knife 21 times.
It's like Trump said. It's like Trump when he raises the,
I solved the tariff problem.
The one that created the first place.
Yes, that's exactly it. It's like, that's why I laughed when you read that part, because I was like, oh yes, Peter was such a hero. Peter and James they're the ones who helped to take away those conditions. But who are the people that imposed them in the first place? It was Peter and James. So that our argument stands that if it wasn't for Paul, Peter and James would not have changed those things. That's for the point we're making.
Yeah,
that's not eisegesis, Dennis.
That was a slam. That was a slam dunk, man. Like, because it's not like you even, I don't know. It seems pretty odd. Like, I didn't think that part of the book was ever going to be like someone finds that contentious. I just thought that was kind of obvious.
But again, because he's Catholic, you're dissing the first pope here, and Peter.
Everyone should get dissed. What does Kendrick say? Diss Marley Marl if I have to. Like, I'll diss the greatest. It's not about I mean, gosh, elevating someone to such a high level, like, I don't know. Maybe Peter should not have such an ego. Paul says put me last among all of them.
Right.
So I think Paul seems like you could diss him a lot better because he's like, well, he already thinks of himself as last. It's only the ego's like, oh no, you can't diss me because I'm the head of the church. I'm the rock. That's very Peter.
Right. Right. Yeah, that is
Ironically,
great.
that's the ironic part, right?
Yeah. So this next part is also. I don't know if you're ready to move on to this next part, but
Yeah, I was just looking at some of my notes to see if I just wanted to see if I had a comment. I might have had one comment from Martin. Oh, here it is. If I could read it, from
sure.
J.
No,
Louis
go ahead.
Martin. Let me just find the right spot. I guess I could just read this whole section. It's not that long. Both in the speech as it was addressed to Peter and in the speech. This is regarding Galatians 2:15 through 21. So open up your Bibles. Both in the speech as it was addressed to Peter and in the speech as it is now addressed to the teachers, verse 15 functions as the friendly introduction. But with verse 16, that gracious beginning also becomes a statement of the issue at hand. When one notes in verse 16 the content of the knowledge that is shared by Paul, Peter, and the teachers, shared indeed by all Jewish Christians, and when one takes account of the way in which Paul makes use of that knowledge in formulating his argument, one sees his strategy. The friendly reference to shared existence as Jewish Christians enables Paul emphatically to level his charge. Jewish Christians, such as Peter and the teachers, have simply to listen to their own gospel tradition to know that their acts stand condemned. To Peter and the teachers, Paul says, in effect, in view of your actions, I will cite your own gospel tradition, not some form of the gospel said to be peculiar to myself. Listen to it. Our shared Jewish Christian gospel makes a declaration pertinent to your desire to bring Gentile Christians under the law. Specifically, one can see from that tradition that God is elected to make things right, not by means of a call to observance of the law, but rather by means of Christ's own faith. That's not me. That's J. Louis Martin. Dennis, take it up with J. Louis Martin.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it says in Galatians. Why that's not eisegesis. What did I read? What of myself did I read? What of my own subjective experience
Right.
and worldview and grid and filter did I import onto the text to make Paul say something that he didn't say?
Yeah. Yeah,
Shall we
I think so.
press on?
Yeah.
Shall we press on? This one was peculiar too. Paul as egalitarian and sexual liberator? Question mark.
Understand, this is the part. Okay, so understand what he's upset about. And I'm gonna change the terminology a little bit to be a little more accurate. What Dennis is upset about is that you and I in this book claim that Paul was not a misogynist and that he was not a homophobe. So this is what
Well,
you would think again. Let's just start with the egalitarian part, okay? Which I don't think he's really going to address. I think he mainly just addresses the LGBTQ situation, which we talk about in like Romans 1 and things like that. That one's a little more nuanced, I think, to reply to. But the thing about Paul saying that Paul was not a misogynist, I'm very proud of that part of the book. I think we did a wonderful job of, again, not eisegesis, quoting the things that Paul said, naming the women that Paul named, dealing with the clobber passages in Romans and in 1 Corinthians that are typically used to claim that, Paul wanted women to be silent in the church and all this other bullshit, and showing why this isn't what Paul's actual opinion really was, and highlighting all the ways that Paul honored women, and Jesus and Paul, not just Paul. We talked about Jesus and Paul both going out of their way to honor women. We wouldn't even know these women, that they were apostles and prophets and evangelists and deacons and etc. Like that women were at quote unquote leadership levels in the early Christian church. We know their names and we know they fill those positions because of Paul naming them by name and naming their positions. So it's crazy to me that Dennis would think that, again, we're using eisegesis to make this point when we're quoting what Paul said to make that point.
Yeah, and I don't like being misrepresented, so let me say what we said in chapter, let's see, 1.
Yes.
right off the bat, I do balance. Well, I wrote this part, but we wrote this. I say, and yet we can safely say Paul is a product of his time and assuredly had what we now understand to be harmful views of women. He also seemed to believe marriage was for the weak. Further, perhaps he may have thought it best for women to, quote, keep the home. And lastly, we're also confident he would not view what we now call healthy sexuality all too favorably. But one thing he did get profoundly correct early on in his writings is this: there should be no religious, social, or gender dividing lines in the body of Christ. Applied to today's context, Paul can be viewed as quite the progressive. Ironic, given how many conservatives use Paul for their myopic arguments. I'm not saying Paul, or we're not saying Paul is a sexual liberator.
No.
I've never personally, and I'm not probably sure you haven't either, said like, oh, you want to find your sexual liberation? Look to Paul.
Oh yeah, he's the one.
In fact, we say quite the opposite. We say, hey, look, we're all a product of our time, and he has
Yeah.
what we now view to be regressive views. But compare him in his day, and he's quite the progressive. Compare him
Yeah.
to who? Peter, James, and the Jerusalem church, his
There you go.
interlocutors.
Yes.
Like, that's what we're saying. And
Yes.
so to be represented or misrepresented so blatantly, like we wrote that in the book. That's in the book in the
Yes.
first couple of pages.
Yes.
So don't say we sit here and say among the book's most bewildering claims is that Paul was an egalitarian and sexual liberator. These assertions
We don't
provide
claim
some.
that.
We don't claim that.
No.
But egalitarians do not have to be so afraid to talk about Paul because, I mean, that's a modern term.
Yes.
I'm not going to ever anachronistically, I hope, use a modern term to explain what someone is necessarily.
Right.
But we're just saying, like, don't use them to argue for complementarianism then either. Like, it's a different time and a different place. And what he tells one group of people, like in pastoral epistles, is not meant to be an injunction for all of time. That's the eisegesis.
And he didn't write those pastoral epistles. Sorry.
Well, even if
Dennis
he did,
may not know that. Maybe Dennis doesn't believe that, but I don't believe he did write that.
Okay, but even if he did,
yeah, no, I agree.
Like,
no, I agree. Even if he did, exactly, I totally agree.
yeah.
But I also think that those, like the First Timothy passage, is also misunderstood. I do think whoever wrote it, I don't think it was Paul. I do think they did write it as a way to control at least specific women in the church in Ephesus.
Yes. Yeah. You know, that's right.
Yeah.
The question I think is that what were the women saying? Paul or pseudo Paul's point would be like, oh, they were saying something that was really factually wrong, and they were gossip or whatever the thing would be.
But it was that church and those women, not all women everywhere.
And even if even if it was wrong for him to do that, it's not our context. Like, it's not our letter.
No.
Like, it's not written to us. It's right. Like, again, we should be approaching it as an historian, not as an apologist who then wants to apply that to why, like, as an authority now. Like, I guess that might come definitionally under, like, what is the Bible? What is the Word of God, so called? Like, I mean, you want to talk about eisegesis? You think Paul thinks he's writing the Word of God, Scripture, right now when he's writing the letter? Like, okay, that's weird. That seems like eisegesis to me, because I mean, who he has the foreknowledge to be like, this is going to be in the Bible one day.
I better hurry up and finish writing that Bible.
I finish my contribution. This is going to be a bestseller. I'm not going to back out of this deal.
Oh no, I got to hurry up and finish this. I'm under contract.
I mean, as a publisher, if I got an author and I'm like, dude, this is going to be the Word of God one day, finish your letter, bro. We're going to include it in there. You better write.
Get that Word of God finished. Hurry up.
Get it finished. Okay. So he quotes us, says, in chapter 5, while interpreting Romans 1:26-27, the authors write, because of Christianity's fascination with condemning the LGBTQ community, there is no reason to believe that what is being described here is analogous to what we would today refer to as homosexuality. Okay. And what is being condemned is the use of sexual intercourse as part of the worship of created things, idols.
Which is what it is.
That's kind of what's going on.
Even Catholic scholars agree with this. I mean, some of the scholars we quoted as agreeing with this were, I don't even think we even say this, our conservative Catholic scholars have agreed that what Paul is condemning is idol worship and not homosexuality.
However, they then assert anyone who is inflamed in lust is in sin, whether gay, straight, or otherwise. And finally, straight sex is not evil, gay sex is not evil. If the intercourse involves love and trust in God, it is not what Romans 1 condemns. Yeah, I mean, like
I stand by that.
that's not even, and I stand by it rhetorically, not even as like my full expression of what sexual, like there's so much there to say. Well, so what does it mean for someone to be inflamed in lust? It's simply to say, like, look, if this is your sexual ethic, Paul here is not condemning one or the other, because
Right.
if you applied, like you wrote a lot of this section, I think, when it gets to specifics,
Yeah.
it's like, if we're going to apply, and you do a thought experiment in that chapter, and I like that.
Yes. Yes.
That's the context of a lot of this, is this thought experiment. It's not to say, oh, this is my thesis on sexuality. It's a thought experiment. It's to say, if you are saying that Paul is condemning homosexuality, quote unquote, he also seems to have apply that to straight sex, and you will have to condemn the straight sex you're having.
That's right.
Because Paul seemed to have a negative view of sex, full stop.
In general, yes.
If we're saying that. So
Yeah.
I don't think Paul would really care. He'd be like, oh, I think Paul would do a rhetorical exercise with you to say, okay, if you're going to condemn those gay people over there, you're still having sex too. And I said that any of this is forbidden. Like, you shouldn't be
Right.
having, like, he'd look down on people getting married, right?
Yeah.
Like,
He
don't
said preferred everybody was celibate, just like him.
be like me.
Yeah. Be like me.
I am it.
Everybody should be like I am, because I'm normal. I'm right.
So it's like, yeah, no, never will I turn to Paul and say, this is the epitome. This is sexual liberator par excellence.
Yes.
And then he goes on. This reflects extreme eisegesis, in bold, no link, but in bold.
Yeah,
It is implausible that a first century Jewish Christian like Paul would endorse modern same-sex relationships.
But we're not saying he's endorsing them. We're saying that isn't his point.
Yeah, you're right. Like, he might have a regressive view. Like, he might look at me and my wife being married and always view it negatively, because, like, I would have never gotten married in the first place.
Right.
The authors further impose modern categories onto Paul. False teachers, and he quotes us, false teachers spreading a message of us versus them, women versus men, Jews versus Gentiles, kosher versus unclean, gay versus straight. Excuse me. They claim, unless we believe Paul created divisions between male apostles and female ones, we must acknowledge something else is going on when he writes that on the surface seems like a blatant disregard for his own rules. Yeah, we're not saying he came up with all of these categories.
No.
Like, I mean, he didn't. He didn't.
Some of these are pulled out of context as well. Yeah.
I don't honestly don't even know what he's saying. Like, we're not. I don't know how any of that proves what I don't even know what his argument is. Honestly, I'm really confused by this.
Yeah. I'm not sure either.
Like, we're not the ones saying that. We're not imposing modern categories onto Paul at all. Like, I think
we're talking in general that the false teachers that Paul is opposing are the ones imposing the us versus them mentality, which, yes, is expressed in Romans and in Galatians and other places as male, female, slave, free, Jew, Gentile. And yes, then we add others but there's just other examples of us and them. We're not trying to say that Paul meant that. We're saying that the false teachers are trying to divide people in categories. And that Paul is trying to avoid putting people in any categories at all, whatever that happens to be.
And I think we say that is like, if we apply it to today's context, if Paul's going to be consistent, we can apply those modern categories using his philosophical rationale.
Yes. That's all we're saying.
All we would say to Paul, so if Paul was imported to right here next to me in this podcast room, I would say, Paul, I know you didn't mean this, but your theology dictates that I, as a modern person, have to say, you cannot create dividing lines between cis and trans, between gay and straight, between bi and poly, and I can use those modern classifications and then be very Pauline and say, and then tease out why, if he's countering me, would be wrong when applied to today's logic. Now, that to me would be very Pauline, right? He's gonna reduce your argument to rubbish based on your own logic. We don't then turn around and necessarily say, oh, Paul meant this. He's using rhetoric.
Yes.
And so, no, I mean, a lot of this book, and I think we say that up front, like, we're going to be rhetorical.
Yeah.
Like, not everything in our book, Reading Romans Right, is theology, just like not everything in Romans is his theology.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, the real purpose of this book, Dennis is going to tell us.
Thanks, Dennis. Tell us what we really are doing.
Don't read the preface of our book or the foreword or the introduction. Read Dennis's. Dennis is going to tell you.
Yeah.
It
he'll
is clear
tell
that the book's goal is not to correct common misreadings or restore Paul's original intent. Instead, it seeks to reinvent Paul by misreading Romans through a progressive lens. Not at all. Paul's not a progressive. He's progressive compared to James in the Jerusalem church. That doesn't make him a progressive. Though framed as exegesis, it ends up being a masterclass in eisegesis. You still haven't proven that or shown
Nope.
it. In the epilogue, the authors make their intentions clear. They quote us, or he quotes us. Again, though, it seems too much of the Christian church is stuck in the ways of the false teachers. So may this book be an excoriating rebuke of them, just as the letter to the Romans was 2,000 years prior. Because if we do not have a gospel that is for everyone, regardless of race, religion, socioeconomic status, gender, or sexual identity, then we do not have a gospel at all.
And why would anyone disagree with that?
I stand by that 1,000%.
1,000 times. And how would you say that that's not what Paul is doing between chapter 1 and chapter 2?
Right.
Even if you don't buy the rest of what we're saying, I don't see how, even as a conservative Catholic, you would disagree with that assessment of what Paul is doing in chapter 1 and then rebuking them in chapter 2. And that why is he doing that? Isn't his point that the gospel is for everyone? Isn't that, again, he totally left out the whole thing about what's happening between chapter 1 and chapter 11, the massive universalist statement at the end of chapter 11, all of that. Like he doesn't deal with any of that, doesn't respond to any of that. No. Again, I'm very disappointed because what I feel like is he found a couple of things that he disagreed with and that he could just basically throw the word eisegesis at and think, okay, there you go, I've done it. But no, dude, what I wanted, Dennis, what I wanted you to do, what I want anyone who reviews this book to do is to take a hard look at the sections of this book where we challenge your assumptions. And even if you don't agree with us, just say for a second, well, okay, but what if they're right? What if Paul did mean that? What if I am reading Paul wrong? What if Romans doesn't mean this? And just go a little bit farther down the road with what we're trying to show you in this book. And it's the inability and the unwillingness to even entertain the possibility of what we're saying is right there in Romans. That I'm disappointed in. I wanted you to at least say, yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. I see that's one way you could read Romans. I see how it would fit, but I still disagree with it, and here's why. But to just ignore it completely, you're not even going to mention it to people reading your article on your blog that we even go there. That's to me. I'm sorry. I expected way more. Sorry.
You don't have to be sorry. Dennis seems like the kind of person that we can.
We might have him back on the show. Maybe we'll do a little.
I just want to. Yeah, I'm like you. I want to be pointing at specific things. Like, again, it seems like lazy. I don't want to use the word lazy as pejorative, but it just as a descriptor. Like, it seems lazy to be like they're wrong because insert entire chapter of Acts.
Yeah.
Like that.
And you haven't really dealt with the argument.
You haven't really dealt with anything. Like, I could just turn around and play that game and say, well, turn to Galatians, where Paul, out of his own fucking mouth, says, I opposed him to his face because he stands condemned. No, they were cool. 100% cool with each other.
No, they were all together. Yeah. In fact, Peter and James were the ones that kind of helped change that whole policy that they also created.
Paul's laughing in his grave, like, what? No, I opposed these people to their face.
Squeeze me?
Yeah. And then told them to castrate themselves. I don't.
Yeah.
Paul put that in the Word of God to cut your dick off. I think he was mad. And who was he mad at? Well,
yeah,
Peter, James, and the Jerusalem church.
Yeah.
That's I have no dog in the fight. Like, why would I go out of my way to have Paul say things that I need him to say? You do.
Right.
You do that.
Dennis does.
Dennis, like, you're the person in this faith that has to have these, which I don't get. It seems like, yeah, you're like, I don't know. I'd be curious what Dennis, like, how he interprets the Bible or his theory of inspiration of Scripture as a Catholic. Obviously, Protestants elevate the Bible really, really high. The paper pope is what,
Yes. Yeah.
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 So I know Catholics generally, like, the joke is like they don't even bring the Bible to church.
No, they don't. No, they
Like,
basically let the church reads it for them. And I think this is part of the problem is that back when on that episode that Dennis was on, I asked him and Kermit the same question was on this issue of homosexuality. Like, if someone could show you that the Bible didn't say what you thought it was saying, would you change your mind? Kermit, at least to his credit, said he would, and pretty much Dennis said no, because Dennis can't. He would have to stop being a Catholic. And I would recommend maybe he should consider that, because I think there's a whole lot of things. But that one specifically, that issue of homosexuality specifically is one that do you have the courage to look at it, to really, really look at it and say, wow, maybe the Catholic Church is wrong about that. I'm curious about that. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah. John asks, can you please post the link to the review? Yeah, it's in there. I could put it up here, but
you can't.
You can't. You're not going to want to copy and paste all that. But there it is. You can click on it if you're on Facebook or YouTube. The link is there.
If you just search Dennis Knapp, Knapp, reading how not to read Romans, you'll find it too.
He blogs for the Latin Rite on Patheos.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, I'm glad we had a chance to respond to that review. I'm hoping to get other reviews that are a little more, like I want someone to bring it, and maybe Dennis just isn't at that level. I don't mean this, because it's not like I'm a big scholar or anything either. But I guess I was hoping for more of a scholarly response, like somebody who's going to quote some other passages or deal with it more philosophically or theologically.
Yeah. We wrote a lot of, like, I remember doing, like, refamiliarizing myself with textual overstatements and textual understatements and, like, all these kind of scholarly things that I had to, familiarize myself from
a while ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't cared about that in a long time, but so I had to go back to Campbell's book and Martin's book and Pepiot's book and a lot of articles online. And then for it to be so, like, offhanded, like, they're wrong because of Acts 15, you're like, oh wow, like
eisegesis,
buzzword, and I'm like, damn, I spent hours upon hours going over those sections because it was very technical and not technical compared to Campbell or anything, but technical for us and our, I think trying to balancing what we do is in these kind of books is truly balance scholarship that is well above our pay grade, and people who don't read this kind of stuff, because they're not going to pick up a 700-page book on Galatians.
It costs like $150.
Yeah, it's like $79, I think, when I bought it for Galatians. And then Campbell's could be $100 or whatever. I don't know. 1,200 pages though. Just the print cost alone's got to be like 30. Shit.
Yeah.
And so it's a tightrope of, like, balancing readability and the information, and then to get such a offhanded review was like, oh. Yeah, I feel disappointed a little bit too. Yeah. And again, not because he disagrees. We knew he's going to disagree, of course. Like, if you were like, "Oh, I agree with you," and be like, "Oh, are you sure you're Catholic?"
Yeah. Right.
I didn't expect that. What are you doing on the Catholic channel? That's what I thought about Kermit too. I was like, wait, you're not progressive. Like, why are you on the progressive channel?
Well, I understand why Dennis is on the Catholic channel. I don't understand why Kermit is on the progressive one.
Yeah, that was weird to me. I was thrown off by that.
Yeah. He really should be on the evangelical channel for non-Trinitarians. If it was such a category, non-Trinitarian evangelicals.
Well, and I don't care. Like, I mean, it's just a biblicist can't really be progressive. Like,
the minute you say you're a biblicist, I was just like, nope.
Oh,
Sorry, buddy, you're not progressive.
biblicist. Okay. Anyway, well, thanks for the review, Dennis.
Thanks.
Thanks for
Yeah,
listening, folks. And again, before you sign off, please, again, like we don't just say this. This isn't an ad for someone. Join the collective.
please.
Thecollective.com. It's scrolling across the bottom. Can we put the link in the comments?
Yeah.
It's in the comments now. It's there on YouTube. It's there on Facebook, on the choir channel if you're watching there. Get 1 month free. Use the promo code when you check out. 1 month free, all in caps. The number 1 and then month free to get. Wait for it. 1 month free.
There you go.
And that gives you enough time to check it out and see if it's for you. But if we're gonna support independent media, we're gonna try to do. We got to do this kind of stuff. We got to come together and put our money where our mouth is, and hopefully, we give you content that's well worth more than $5 a month. That's the hope.
Big time. Way more than 5.
Yeah,
That's right.
for sure.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much.
All right.
This was a lot of fun. Please call the hotline because Matt and I are going to be doing this on Friday, the bonus show, 530-332-8020. Leave a voicemail or text. Let us know what you think. Or anything else that's on your mind. It doesn't have to be about reading Romans. It could be about anything. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. Thanks, y'all.
All right. See you guys.
Peace.